And that is U.S. President Donald Trump outlining the United States' new plan for Afghanistan, bringing up pillars of this plan, shifting from a time-based approach to conditions involving Pakistan more in the region, giving them consequences, involving India more, integrating all instruments of U.S. military power. Just some of the things he mentioned in this half-hour or so long speech. I'm joined by Ahmad Shuja. He's a writer and analyst who has lived and worked in Kabul. He joins me now here in Washington, D.C. Just your reaction to this speech. Obviously, the president flip-flopped from what he said on the campaign trail, but did he really say anything new? And will it work?
The second question is really the billion-dollar question: will it work? But I think the first question, did he say anything new, is really the right question, and it's a question that we can answer much more easily. Number one, he talked about consequences for Pakistan, which is something new that hasn't been talked before. Number two, over the objections of the Pakistani military and the Pakistani government, he's actually cozying up to or getting closer to India, which is also something new, and it's being said publicly and blatantly and very out there in a very blunt way. Number three, he's actually talking about a victory in Afghanistan, and he defines victory by, quote, preventing the Taliban from taking over the country. That to me doesn't really seem like a lot of very much, which is different from what the President Obama, for example, talked about, which is to disrupt, dismantle, and destroy Al-Qaeda, which is different from what he's talking about here with respect to the Taliban. And looks like the mission he's talking about is actually also involving elements of counterinsurgency, which is talking about elements that are fighting the Afghan government, in addition to elements of counterterrorism, which is fighting the elements like Daesh and Lashkar-e-Taiba and the IMU, which are terrorist organizations that have been the raison d'etre for the U.S. going into Afghanistan. These are the organizations from which the U.S. actually fear that there might be attacks launched into Afghanistan. And number three, there's an open-ended, there's no timeline for the U.S. military involvement, which is very, very new. The talk about a conditions-based withdrawal is actually also not very new, but in terms of a restatement of public policy, it is new, because in 2008, 2009, the U.S. generals, NATO generals were talking about a condition-based withdrawal, and by that they meant the ability of the Afghan forces to take over command from the U.S. and NATO forces as they left and evacuated those areas. But turns out that the timetable for the actual withdrawal as set by President Obama was much more motivated by the demands of politics in Washington as opposed to the conditions on the ground. So we will have to see how Trump does on his condition-based approach. He's
also not giving any numbers. I mean, there was some anticipation that he might reveal number of troops going, there might be a surge, but no numbers. He doesn't want to give away when something might happen. How does this leave you? And what is the international community to glean from this? How do you think they will react?
I would imagine that there is a number that's really not stated publicly, because that would give the Taliban something to work on, something to actually plan for. The whole open-ended, no timeline, conditions-based approach is also something that is designed to take away the thrust from the Taliban, because the apocryphal saying, probably apocryphal saying, is that the Taliban telling the Americans, you may have all the watch, but we actually have all the time. We can just wait you out. And so this whole no timeline, no numbers approach is designed towards that, but I would imagine deep down behind the scenes with the Afghan government and its NATO partners, there's Germany, there's France, there's Italy, there's a whole lot of other countries that have contributed troops to Afghanistan. There are talks about numbers of troops that are going to be in Afghanistan and for particular purposes, because there really wasn't a lot of talk about what exactly the American troops would do in supporting the Afghan government. Would it be training more troops? Because right now it is a train, advise, assist mission. But he also talked about giving the commanders an open sort of, a more sort of giving the commanders the authority to make decisions on the ground in the fight. But what exactly that looks like was a little bit vague.
All right, Ahmad Shuja, we appreciate your time. This is a developing story. We appreciate your analysis.
Thank you.